Imagine walking through a cemetery where the dates carved into stone tell a profound lie. A headstone reads, "Born 1950, died 2025. But the truth is far more unsettling. The person resting beneath that soil didn't die in 2025. They died in 1975. At the age of 25, the exact moment they stopped dreaming, stopped questioning, and surrendered, letting their internal fire burn out against the crushing weight of routine. Benjamin Franklin once observed that most men die at 25, but aren't buried until 75. We live in a world filled with the living dead walking ghosts who occupy offices, get stuck in traffic, or stare into screens, entirely unaware that their souls passed away decades ago. How does this quiet tragedy happen? In our youth, life is an untamed wilderness. We possess an insatiable hunger for wonder. Every path is open, and every tomorrow promises a new frontier. But as we approach our mid-20s, a subtle, invisible shift occurs. The fluid, chaotic energy of youth begins to calcify. Society approaches us with a pre-written script, promising that if we simply follow the dotted line, we will find safety. We exchange our wild sky for a narrow ceiling. We accept the golden cage of predictable comfort, trading the terrifying beauty of freedom for the numbing security of steady paychecks and a socially approved existence. The danger isn't that we fail to achieve our goals. The real danger is that we achieve the wrong goals too easily. We build walls around our lives to keep out the storm, only to realize those very walls have blocked out the sun. We become functional automatons, executing daily routines with flawless precision, while the pilot inside has fallen fast asleep. The dynamic, vibrant individual is replaced by a carefully constructed mask, a puppet moving to the invisible strings of societal expectations, chasing markers of validation that do not belong to us. This psychological paralysis is not a modern invention. It is a fundamental flaw in the human condition that has haunted the greatest minds throughout history. Consider the life of Count Leo Tolstoy. By his late 40s, Tolstoy was one of the most celebrated men on earth. He had written masterpiece novels like War and Peace, amassed immense wealth, owned vast estates, and possessed a loving family. By every metric of societal success, he had won the game of life. Yet, precisely at the peak of his achievement, a profound and terrifying darkness descended upon him. Tolstoy looked back at his life and realized it was perfectly hollow. He felt like a man trapped in a maze, walking the same paved corridors day after day, realizing he was climbing an endless staircase that led absolutely nowhere. The routine of maintaining his wealth and status had drained the vitality from his spirit. In his biographical account, A Confession, he wrote that he felt a sudden arrest of life. He was completely paralyzed by a simple question: why? Why do anything tomorrow if it looks exactly like today? The crisis was so severe that Tolstoy, a man of immense physical and intellectual strength, had to hide all the ropes from his estate to prevent himself from hanging himself, and stopped carrying a rifle because he feared he would turn it on his own chest. He had realized that he was living the prepackaged script of a wealthy Russian nobleman, but his authentic self was starving to death inside that luxury. He was a living testament to the fact that you can possess the entire world, yet still be a corpse walking among the living. Why does this spiritual calcification hit so precisely around the age of 25? Neurologically, this is the period when the human prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for risk assessment, impulse control, and long-term planning, fully matures. But as our biological machinery stabilizes, our psychological world often hardens into concrete. We stop learning through exploration and start surviving through optimization. Think of the human spirit as a vibrant, rushing river. In our youth, the water carves new paths, breaks over rocks, and adapts to the landscape with fierce, unpredictable energy. But over time, the dams of social conditioning, debt, and routine block the flow. the water stops moving. It becomes a stagnant pond, breeding resentment, boredom, and quiet desperation. We succumb to the tragedy of the unlived life. We begin to value certainty over curiosity. We find comfort in predictability, even if that predictability brings misery. This is the moment the internal fire goes out. We replace the pursuit of truth with the accumulation of comfort. We convince ourselves that we are just being realistic or mature, but realism is often just the elegant tombstone we place over our dead passions. When you look into the eyes of someone trapped in this state, you don't see anger or despair. You see an eerie flatness. They have accepted their place in the machinery of modern survival, forgetting that survival is not the same thing as being alive. Psychologist Carl Jung identified this crisis as the conflict between the persona and the true self. The persona is the mask we wear to position ourselves in society, the responsible worker, the good citizen, the accommodating partner. Around the age of 25, the pressure to perfect this mask becomes overwhelming. We pour all our energy into decorating the facade, completely neglecting the house within. The true self, the reservoir of our unique desires, primal instincts, and unadulterated creativity, is pushed deep into the dark corners of the subconscious. But what happens when you bury a living thing? It doesn't dissolve. It rots. It mutates into anxiety, chronic fatigue, and a low-grade, persistent sadness that no consumer purchase can cure. This leads to a shattering emotional moment of reckoning. You look into a cracked mirror in the middle of the night, staring at the lines on your face, and ask, who is this person? What happened to the kid who wanted to change the world? We suffer from a profound existential amnesia. We forget that the greatest risk in life is not the risk of failure, it is the risk of never truly showing up. We become fearful of change because change threatens the brittle stability of our golden cage. We choose a slow, comfortable decay over the painful but necessary friction of growth. To escape this graveyard of the living, you must execute a deliberate act of internal sabotage against your own routines. You cannot wait for an external crisis to wake you up. You must consciously disrupt the spell of your own complacency. This requires a practical lesson in what ancient philosophers called voluntary discomfort. Break the hypnotic rhythm of your daily calendar. If you have spent years building a life based solely on logic and safety, it is time to introduce a deliberate element of chaos. Reconnect with the things you did purely for the joy of them, before the world told you everything had to be monetized, optimized, or measured. If a tree wants to grow through concrete, it must crack the pavement to survive. You must crack the rigid structures of your daily existence. Start small. Change your physical environment. Speak an unspoken truth. Commit to a creative pursuit that has no commercial value, or face a fear you have spent a decade avoiding. The moment you step into the territory of the unknown, your brain wakes up, neuroplasticity fires, and the stagnant river begins to flow again. Resurrecting yourself means realizing that security is an illusion, and the only true safety lies in your capacity to adapt, grow, and burn with purpose. The calendar will continue to turn, and the years will pass regardless of whether you choose to live them or merely endure them. Your heart will beat roughly 2.5 billion times in a lifespan. Do not allow those beats to become the ticking clock of a prison cell. The ultimate tragedy is not leaving this world. It is leaving it without ever having truly arrived. Do not wait for the soil to cover your chest to finally stop living. Break the mask, shatter the cage, and reclaim the fire that was stolen from you. Because the world does not need more people who are merely breathing. The world needs people who have come alive. Do not let them bury a body that has already been dead for 50 years.